If primary care physicians want to adhere to the national recommendations for preventing chronic diseases or treating acute care conditions, they would require an additional 26 hours per day for an average patient load. On top of that, there are 3 million publications added each year to the medical literature. In response to this challenge, AvoMD has developed a point-of-care application specifically designed to assist physicians in systemizing clinical decision-making. The app aligns with the latest guidelines and protocols from the hospitals or clinics where physicians practice, offering a streamlined and individualized approach to patient care. AvoMD not only facilitates the decision-making process by providing immediate access to relevant guidelines and risk calculators, but also enables real-time documentation of clinical decisions as they are made. Today's guest, Dr. Saperstein, an accomplished physician entrepreneur with an interesting background that combines both medicine and tech, who took the lead to improve healthcare for the benefit of many people. Yeah, it's so great to have you here. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So you have a very interesting background, man. Like you have an interest in medicine and you also have interest in IT and clinical informatics. Why did you choose to start AvoMD? As a physician, you have a very comfortable lifestyle. Why did you choose to take entrepreneurship and start building this company?
I actually started it before I had the comfortable lifestyle. I started it in residency. So, definitely there was a problem to be solved, right? So for me, throughout life, I've always been focused on the middle layer. It's like teachers. How can you help teachers so that they'll be able to help students better? How can you help doctors? How can you help clinicians so that they'll be able to help patients better? It's like, for me, it's always about helping my colleagues. And this is a retrospective, I'm looking back and it's like, oh, this is what I've done. And so in residency, it was like I started a wellness committee and ran an open mic night and helped with installing the two-way communication system. Each of these things was how can we help system processes that will allow us to do our work better. And Avo was really kind of that too. It was just, is there a way to be able to function better? And I had dealt with each of these different aspects that Avo does in my own way. Like I wanted the ability to see society guidelines quickly. So I used to write it out on index cards and take pictures of it and make adjustments for the different places I was rotating in and sharing those pictures with my colleagues. And I wanted to have note templates. So I wrote my own note templates and I had them in a Google Drive. So I had my assessment and plan for heart failure and asthma and COPD and readily accessible. I shared those also. It's like shareable clinical decision support, but very low tech. And then I met my co-founder, PJ, and PJ was actually building this as an app. And, I told him he's building my dream. And he was like, it sounds like you're dreaming of what I'm building. I was like, I know, we got to work together. So, that's kind of what really brought it together, but from these motivations of really wanting to be able to help this middle layer.
Gotcha. And so your co-founder's name is PJ, right? Or the
Yeah, I have
nickname?
two co-founders, PJ and Lawrence.
Okay. And what's their background like?
So PJ and I have a pretty similar background from the time that we hit med school. Internal medicine, clinical informatics, for both of us. PJ's practicing at Beth Israel Deaconess. I was practicing at Beth Israel Mount Sinai. Now I'm practicing at Mount Sinai South Nassau, but both of us per diem, 1 or 2 days per month, just to be able to retain and remember the problems that we're solving. Lawrence is a much more of a business focused. He was a private equity investor in the health space and then went to Columbia's MBA, and we all met at Columbia. And when I met PJ, it was like a guy who knows how it's almost like he has the soul of an engineer and the mind of a doctor. So he's able to really allow for us to solve our own problems. It's like how can you contribute to solving workflow issues if you don't understand it. Well, PJ does get it, right? So when I met him, I was like, oh wow, this is cool. And Lawrence is also both of his parents are doctors. And so he really comes from this perspective too of understanding what doctors go through and understanding if that's an issue that we currently have. Like if this is something to be solved. But
100%.
with but with a focus on, okay, well, how do we do it in a way that is financially sound, in a way that we're proving ROI, in a way that we can allow for a financial gain for those that use us too, right? And putting these perspectives together allowed us to really be a pretty solid founding team that I continually am thankful for.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like now you mentioned that the flashcards and everything, that's my situation right now. Like in my training, I have my laptop with me and I use my laptop to access Epic or Cerner because like I have all my files on iCloud, like the NCCN guidelines are all there, and I can't like carry them because like if I printed the NCCN guidelines, it's just gonna be like 1,000 pages of slides. So I have to take my laptop with me because like there is no app that I can just like navigate, click easily. And especially like when it comes, we're going to talk about this, that is customizable to the hospital.
So what do you do with
So
the NCCN guidelines? Do you control F to try to find the right place in the
yeah,
guideline?
exactly. Like if I see a patient with like stomach cancer or I see a patient with esophageal cancer, like because like I have Cerner open on my laptop, so I just like jump into my folders, fellowship, NCCN guidelines, esophageal cancer, and then open NCCN guidelines, scroll down to the where the patient is, and like find the slide, which like takes 10 minutes, and then like it's like it's lots of hurdles. Like it's the same thing that you did when you were a resident, but like it's electronic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's actually how we started. It was like I had wished that I can do a control F in the society guidelines to find the right parts that I wanted for my patient. And then it was like, okay, so the first step was if I could have a mobile app that would just guide me through it as if I'm doing a control F, like if I diabetes and CKD, right? If I have a patient that I
Yeah.
know the GFR, if I know if they have diabetes or not, if I know the HbA1c, if I know their potassium, I'm able to get recommendations for what I want by doing control F, control F, control F, control F automatically. That was my first thought, right? And it was like, okay, pathways, guidelines, calculators. And then part two was, what if I can auto-populate that in the EHR from the patient records? And that became our first product, right? That was basically the ability to get to the guidelines that are for my patient quickly. That was part one. Part two, as a corollary, is you got to be able to customize that. You got to be able to really mess with that because every health system does it a little bit differently. So, just because that's the NCCN guidelines doesn't mean that Memorial Sloan Kettering is going to be doing it that way, right? So the ability to customize and make them that was part one. Part two, though, gets a little fancier. It was like, what if you didn't have to just control F, but what if you could ask a chat bot that knew all the NCCN guidelines? And what if there,
Exactly.
right? What if you could just ask it your questions? So that's part two. And that's almost like a second product that we have. And what if you were able to access that product in your EHR, in or out, both HIPAA secure, right? And we offer both. And then part three is, okay, the world has taken the next step. ChatGPT started as a chatbot, but it has gone to building GPTs. What if there was some way of building GPTs in a way that's customizable, in a way that's HIPAA secure in the EHR or outside? But let's talk about in the EHR, meaning I want the ability to have a synopsis of my patient before I actually go see them so that I have all of the important information that goes through their history in a digestible format. I want that to be customizable for my health system. I want next to compare against care gaps for the NCCN guidelines to give recommendations of what might be missing from biomarkers and what else I might need to be adding and tell me where in the guidelines it's coming from so I have a way of validating that that's actually correct in the guidelines and not hallucinating. Then I want to be able to take action. I want to be able to draft a note, or I want to be able to put in those orders. I might want to be able to do a referral. I might want to give information to the patient. Give me action buttons to be able to take those actions. Part of writing a note, I might want to have ambient listening. Allow me to do ambient listening and then write the note. We do all of those. right? So we have a flexible creation of GPTs to be able to actually put it out. And the reason I was asking you what you did is, even for you personally, I wonder if you would want to be able to do this. And part of the question that, I always have, this is not business related, this is me personally, is I always want to help the individuals, right? It's like helping organizations and having a B2B business. It's the decision that we made as a company, right? And that's where we go. But
Exactly.
for me as an individual, I want to help you in your workflow, right? And that that sell into a system, sell into a health system, it's going to take time. It's like 12 months at least to go through the infosec process and right each of the different steps. But if I could give you something that can work out of the EHR that can already help you, how does that work? So we've been offering some of this stuff for individuals for free, just to be able to help there, even as we go about this business prospect and selling it to the health systems.
I love it. I love it. You just answered my next question about how the platform works, but you mentioned something like now it's becoming more relevant to health tech companies because you are approaching physicians. Health tech companies have stopped approaching hospitals because hospitals are like giant whales. Moving them is very hard, like unbelievable the amount of bureaucracy. You can reach out to physicians directly, and physicians are happy to pay subscription fees like on monthly basis if they have something that has helped them on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, the way that our business is currently is we do enterprise businesses. That means that you wait 12 months for a deal or 18 months for a deal or 3 years for a deal, right? But then the deals
Yeah.
have larger contract values. So from a business perspective, right, that's the choice that we made. And so we're not selling subscriptions to individual doctors at this point. We're really doing it on a system perspective. For individual docs, we're giving away some of the basic software for free. It's almost like a Doximity play, right? It's like you can use
Yeah,
it, you
exactly. I
like
gave it a
it, and
try.
then you love it, so bring it up to your health system and say, okay, maybe you should buy this, right? So that's kind of the play there. And obviously it's not as customizable, so it's like, as an individual, you can't get it in your EHR. You can do that through your system. So if you want it in your EHR, you have to go through the system.
Yeah, when it comes to EHR integration, of course, you need the hospital approval, but I was on the platform and I was clicking here and there, and it's very intuitive. I would love to see how it works, when it's integrated in the EHR. I'm sure it has many, I'm sure it will save lots of time when it's integrated in the EHR and in a full hospital system.
Oh, for sure, for sure. We did a randomized control trial, simulated RCT, where we were able to show 50% efficiency gains relative to just using the standard, MD Calc, up to date, everything that exists.
Exactly.
If you
Yeah.
use AVO in the EHR, you could save a lot more time.
Gotcha. And you mentioned that you described the company as no-code platform to transform clinical decision making. So, what do you mean no code? And what does that mean to the individual physician like me?
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about in the beginning, how, I wanted originally to be able to do a control F in the guidelines, but like
Hmm.
set up a system of control F so that it can function and give me all of those components of what I wanted. But what I realized this happened over time as we first set it up and people were emailing me, hey, I need this changed. Hey, I want this different. Hey, we do this different in my system. Hey, this was updated yesterday, but you didn't make this change. Was that it's not scalable for me to be a content owner, for AvoMD to be the content owner. So no code means that you don't need to know how to program. It's almost like we built a programming language for doctors, but
Hmm.
the thing is, it's not programming, it's drag and drop or text based. So you're able to construct it in the platform, in the backend builder, very easily, right? So from a technical capability, any clinical expert can be able to create these pathways. We've restricted it. So we allow for the, quality and safety officers within a governance structure of guideline systems within a health system to control it. We also partnered with about 25 different content partners, like medical societies, to be able to take their content and turn their guidelines and turn that into algorithms. That's how we started, right? And then these other tools the chatbot, the GPTs, these efficiency tools, these are things that happened a little bit later, and now we're allowing for even the creation of those from our back-end no-code system. So you're able to put in, right, like a pathway, which will first incorporate the patient information and give you that, and then guide you down the correct path of questions that you need to ask and the like, and then take you to, okay, we can process all of this information and create a note. Those are the kinds of powerful systems that you can now build without needing to know how to code.
Sweet. And we talked a lot about like hospitals and clinics, and my understanding is AvoMD is like being used in over 10 hospitals and clinics. How did you find, or how did you secure your first deal, your first customer, and how were you able to expand after that?
Yeah, I think we're at about 30 paying customers now.
30. Wow.
And yeah, how did we start? It's all beginnings are tough. We were
I
lucky.
know.
We were lucky because the focus wasn't on making money or being a business. The focus was on helping docs, when we started. And so we started with a free mobile app that we put onto the App Store that got very popular. And then it was like, oh, maybe we can sell to health systems too. And so we had an advisor that made an introduction to one system. And we started with I think it was a free pilot that then turned into a low-cost deal, and that was our first one. And then, through that we were able to show success. And then you go to the next one and you say, look, we did this with the first place. They're also a reference customer. Do you have the same needs? And if so, we can provide this value. And then as you continue to get more and more, then it starts to spread more. So all of these were outbound warm introductions, but then as it progresses, then people start to reach out to you and they say, hey, we heard this place is doing it, is there any chance that we can get involved also?
Gotcha. And one of the sweet things about AvoMD, it's like what makes it different from other clinical decision support tool, like it's customizable for the institution. And like up to date is the same up to date in all institutions, WebMD or Medscape or like any other clinical decision support making. And one of the things that makes medicine unique is like maybe we use X chemotherapy, for example, for first line treatment in this institution, and they use Y chemotherapy
Right.
in another institution. So why do you think customization is important in healthcare, and how much do you think it contributed to where you are right now today?
Every institution thinks that their pathways are the best, and they kind of make fun of themselves and then also make fun of others. And this is of course the large academic institutions, and so being able to build their own into the system allows them to have ownership over it. And we don't take IP for the content, right? We're not a content company. So a health system that's building their own content and they own it, which means that they can also sell it. So it's a money-making opportunity for them through our platform. And then the societies that we work with are also able to keep their IP. And so it's their content, which means that you have off-the-shelf ability. So you could take any of the content as it exists, or you can customize it or create your own. And having this duality allows for those that don't have the resources to take what we have, those that do have the resources to change what they have, right? And there's a reason that these health systems have guideline committees and their own processes for making pathways, right? It's instead of just relying on the societies, it's because every place does it a little bit different, for better or for worse. And when you're trying to fit into an existing system, you have to realize the way that the system works and try to improve it step by step. I can imagine a world that everything just works. It's like, it's my example is the prior auth process. And this is a little bit off topic, but you'll see where I'm going with it. And in the prior
Mhm,
auth
mhm.
process, I currently have to find the right prior auth form, print it out, fill it out, fax it, wait for a response, see if it's covered, and then
I
proceed, right?
know.
And it's the worst. People that are
So
trying to
painful.
solve it on a step-by-step basis say, if I can get you the form automatically so that you don't need to search for it, that would help. If I can get you the form and fill it out automatically, that would help. If I could get you the form and then fax it over to them automatically, that would help even more. If I could do all of those and also see the response and light up green if you get a positive or red if you get a negative, that's almost everything. And all of that is the step-by-step fitting into the workflow. That's the same reason that we need to be able to customize, because everything works that way now. But you can imagine a world where all of that happens automatically. There is no faxing back and forth. The data is sent as a fire packet over to the company, over to the insurance company, and if it's covered, it's covered. And if it's not covered, it's not covered. There's no need for a prior auth because you have everything that's there. If there are exceptions, then the exceptions are already noted. So it's all done. It's all automatic. It's all one system. That is the future, right? But if you try to get there in a process that works in the current way, you're not doing anything because the workflow is different. Same idea over here. By allowing this flexibility and the customizability, we have the ability to fit into existing workflows, even while imagining and providing a platform that is future-proof.
I love it. I love it. I love the customization because like you have more experience than me. Like you work in many other different healthcare systems, and so I also like read this on Twitter. Like it happens when you move from residency to fellowship or from medical school to residency, and then like when you move to a different institution, you see everything's being done in that institution. Oh, they are doing it wrong. We used to do it this way. We used to do it that way. And then after a while, you realize, no, each institution have their own way, which is completely different. And that's why, like, how you fit to the workflow is much more important than coming and bringing something new that you make your customer adopt to you. It's better to adopt your customer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the difficulty is that involves build. So if there's a customer that says
Exactly.
we want something that just works, like you have to have that option too, which we do. And then if there's a customer that says, okay, we're willing to put in the effort to be able to customize it, like that's great, then it'll fit even better.
Gotcha. We talked about the time, like in our conversation earlier, you touched base that you mentioned that using AvoMD saves time for physicians. Are there any other return of investments like hospital benefit when they implement it in their systems?
Yeah, we have a customizable return on investment calculator because the use cases that the health systems are going to adopt can vary, right? So some of them are direct financial returns. For example, in a value-based system where you want to reduce inappropriate referrals, we showed that we can reduce referrals by 73% by equipping the clinicians to know what they're doing without needing to refer. We were able to show improved ED throughput by 36%. And so we have that coupled with the time saved, efficiency gains. We have the amount of time needed for note writing versus our automatic note drafters and how that saves time as well, with or without AI scribe. That's part of it, where we can work with a bridge or DAX, or can use our native functionality. So these kinds of things tie in. And then there's also the kind of intangibles, like how do you measure an exact financial return for burnout versus wellness with clinicians being happier after you've implemented, and showing that on survey data? Or how do you have a difference where clinicians are actually able to make it home earlier? So there is no additional patients that are being seen. There is no financial return, but the clinicians are doing the same amount, but faster. How do you measure that? Is it by the amount of clinicians that are attracted to you, by getting the top talent? Is it from the fact that you have a more positive environment? Like, those are not direct financial returns, but those are customers speak to. So we have basically this calculator that can calculate the financial return. And then there's kind of these intangibles, which are important not to forget. They may not be the initial sale because you got to find money from a budget, but they are what allows for lasting impact.
I love it. You mentioned something very close to my heart, and that's like because like you have the both medical background and tech background. You mentioned that physicians don't see more patients, and that's something I find like very common when like people from tech background come to innovate in healthcare. And like one of the things that they show hospitals or like, oh, we can help your physicians see more patients. But no, physicians don't want to see more patients. Physicians want to see the same amount of patient in less amount of time.
Yeah,
It's
or
like,
the way that I say it is like, I mean, this is for me. I wanted to be able to inject the humanity back into patient care. So
I love it.
I don't want to have to deal with like going into the results tab and going into the care everywhere tab and go right all of these tasks that I need to do. Give it to me in one screen. Like we pull from results and care everywhere. We're now integrated also with an HIE to even pull beyond from the electronic health record. So give that to me so that I can spend those extra 5 minutes chatting with my patient. I don't need to be faster necessarily. I want to have a better care experience. Like, let me enjoy it. And for me personally, like I love being able to chat with patients, finding out their stories. Like people are cool. And you lose that when you are like, I have 15 minutes and I know it takes me 11 minutes in the EHR, so I have 4 minutes to talk. And if I ask them about what they were up to last weekend, I know that I won't get more details about their chest pain. So I'm limited. And then you lose that feeling of humanity. That's why a lot of us went into this. And that's what contributes a lot to burnout. It's like you don't have control over it. This gives you more control over that inhuman aspect so you can inject the humanity back.
I completely agree. Like the human part is like it's not only you. Like when you are seeing patients, like even when I run in the hospital, like for people like who have tech background, like please listen to this. Like when I run the hospital, I see my patients for like if I'm working 8 hours, I spend directly with patients hour and a half, max 2 hours, and 6 hours is documentation.
Yeah,
Documentation, sending emails, discharge orders, putting orders. It sucks. Like
yeah,
I miss it. Like last day, I was talking to this patient, 83-year-old, who was like who went biking last year for like 60 miles,
yeah.
and like medicine is consuming that patient-physician interaction with the current state of EHRs and what's going on in the how hospitals are structured.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the main reasons that clinicians are leaving clinical medicine, right? It's like you can't have that positive impact that you want to have. You're more of just a documenter and clicker. And it's like nobody wants to do that. People want that tangible, like, oh, I made a difference, and they can feel it. And it's like for me personally also, right? Your first question was, why did I do it if I could have had a cushy lifestyle? And it's like I want to have a broad positive impact. That's what's meaningful to me. And this allows me to do that. Whereas just working in clinical medicine alone didn't allow me to do that because I couldn't have the same kind of impact that really is meaningful.
I love it. Like it's like what you say is very close to my heart because like that's one of the reasons like I do what I do. Like I meet with people and like I try to bring them on this platform because like I think everyone's trying to make a difference in healthcare, and that's what driving physicians. And as you mentioned, lots of physicians are unfortunate right now. Like they are trying to leave on Twitter, on Facebook. Like there are tons of posts. Oh, like I have X amount of money. Like how can I retire? What should I retire? I'm burned out. Do you think if I do this job, is it easier? Do you think if I can find like lots of there is a full website for that physician side gigs, and some people are trying to make their side gig their main job and
Yeah,
escape from clinical medicine.
yeah.
Um, Reflecting back on your journey, looking back, what mistakes you've done, and what would you do differently now if you're going to start all this from scratch?
Yeah, there's the famous phrase in startup world, which is fail fast. So if you're able to make mistakes quickly, then you can learn from those mistakes. And at the same time, within medicine, you can't really fail because you're impacting other people directly. And so there's this fear of failure within medicine. And I think this failing fast concept has resonated a lot, right? So like what mistakes have I made? Well, we've failed fast a lot of times. It's in many different aspects. And I think in doing it, right, there's a separation between things that will impact patient care where you can't afford to fail versus like business decisions or making these other kinds of mistakes where you can afford to fail fast. and seeing what would be valuable is something that you can do. So customer discovery and getting out and finding out what's important, what are the values, what are your pain points, what can we help solve, is a good thing. So within that domain, it's like we've pivoted from the beginning. It's I told you, even as we started, we were a decision support app. That was a pathways app, and originally we were marketing towards individual clinicians, and then we realized that's really not going to bring in enough for us to take it to the next level. And so we moved to go to health systems, and it's for each of these different moves as we go. And then, okay, well, how do we integrate AI? And even in the beginning, when people were emailing me and they said, hey, you got to fix all of these things, and it's like, I don't want that. Like, that's not scalable, right? So each of these things you learn as you continue. What would I do going back? Pretty
Yeah.
similar. I like to fail fast. It's a good thing. Sometimes it doesn't feel good in the moment. It helps when you have the perspective of it's okay to fail fast, right? Or it's a good thing to fail fast. It doesn't always feel good in the moment. Um, but yeah, I love this journey. I really do. I'm very thankful that I have the opportunity to be on it. Very thankful for the people that I work with. It makes all the difference. And then really grateful for the positive impact that we can make and that I can make. It's really, really fulfilling. So I love this journey. I encourage people to do this non-clinical but clinical related journey to be able to help on the systems side. And one of my passions is to help guide people that don't know how to take that leap to just get started with a fail fast mentality. And it's the ability to give back also, which I find fulfilling. So I'm grateful for this path with the failures that have come along with it.
I love how you divide your decisions into two categories: patient-related decisions and business-related decisions. And depending on that, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I heard. Depending on that, if it's business-related, you want to fail, you're okay with that. But if it's patient-related, you want to be as safe as possible.
Yeah, like you want to be more conservative on the patient side, right? It's like I have definitely thought about having our apps being patient facing and giving it to patients to be able to go through. But you can't do that until you know that it'll work, right? You can't give them a draft of something that might not be 100% accurate. Whereas you
Yes.
can give clinicians a draft of something that might not be 100% accurate, with them knowing that it's up to them to read it through and decide if they want to make any changes. Like, they're ultimately the clinician. And if it works 99% of the time and gives them the ability to check where the information's coming from, that's a lifesaver. Like, if you could tell me, for your example, if I could tell you where in the NCCN guidelines it's coming from for the query that you're asking, or predicting your query and giving you that information up front, and it's correct 95% of the time and highlighted where it's coming from, and the 5% of the time you recognize that that's something which is an extrapolation that you may or may not take into account, is very different than me giving that to the patient. So what I mean is, on that giving to the patient, I have to take a more conservative route, whereas giving it to you with the appropriate guardrails, that's a great thing. And it actually, I recall this debate at the most recent AMIA conference, American Medical Informatics Association, and I was entertained because it was a debate on, should we have AI in clinical practice, and both sides were saying the same thing. They were both saying there are dangers, there are risks, we need to risk mitigate. One conclusion is, yes, we need to risk mitigate and study it. The other one is, no, we need to risk mitigate and study it first, right? And I think that really is this same thing, but if you can separate it into here, where it's like, you don't want to have it run on its own. You want to have guardrails, somebody that's in the driver's seat. Like, you want to test it. You want the ability for a fail-safe. Like, that's the right way to do it. You don't want to just have it run rogue without that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not only AI. Like I think people like are afraid of AI because it's something new. But every test we use in the hospital, like has like an error margin, right? Like if you do CBC on a patient and their hemoglobin, which is like indication of their red blood cells, it's like 11, 11, 11, 11, and one day it's like 7. The first thing you think about it is like, without any signs of bleeding, the first thing that you think about it, like, this could be wrong. Let's repeat the tests again, because like it does not like comply with the trend. It's off the trend. So that's why like you need rails, which are like human physicians behind it. Um, I want to move on now to learn more about your experience and what you've done. And one of the major things in health tech, especially like in the last year and the economical situation, is like raising money has been very challenging. Do you have any advice for health tech entrepreneurs that are trying to scale and raise money?
If you believe in it, you'll believe in it for a certain reason. If you can prove it to yourself, for example, if there's enough traction that you'll convince yourself that it's something that's worth continuing to do, if you're making enough money, that it's worth doing, etc., right? Whatever these are, if you have a team that you believe in, right? Each of these different categories, you'll be able to convey that, right? It's just how can you tell it in a narrative to convey it in the appropriate amount of time so that people don't get bored, right? How do you share that excitement with others? And as you're sharing that excitement, you can figure out how to raise in that way. So that's really the key, right? You have to have like these success metrics that can prove it to yourself, and then you can share that with others. That's really how that's how we did it. And you probably want to start with the friends and family and continue on there if you're taking a classic track, friends and family, angels, and then VCs. If you're trying to scale up directly, try to find the people that will understand what you're talking about. So physician-led VCs, I find, get the concept even faster than those
Mhm.
that are outside. There are exceptions, of course, um, but that's a direction to look in.
So you find it easier, like if you go to VCs, that you know that their decision, or on the table there's a physician who is sitting and helping them in their decision. Is that correct?
Yeah, or that it's physician partners, etc.
Gotcha. And I've been reading about your background as well. So beyond being a physician and entrepreneur, you have also musical talents. So like, what's the story? Did you figure out how to work 40 hours a day? Like, how are you able to balance all this with life as well?
I don't work as much when I'm in the shower, but I sing more there. So that, definitely a balance. And then I remember when I was a kid. So I was taking piano lessons and guitar, and I took violin for some time. And, I didn't really like to practice as much. And I definitely found giving performances was something that motivated me. So I would always try to get myself towards either competitions or performances or other things that would give me that extra motivation to just put in that time. And then it's pretty similar. It's like the things that are exciting, the things that I enjoy doing, you just find time for, right? It just time somehow expands to allow you to do the things that you enjoy. And if it's something which is more of a slog, time really just it doesn't exist. It's like, oh, it's gone. And it's like, the time disappears, like, oh, all of a sudden my day is gone. What happened? Like, well, that was an enjoyable day. That's fine. And you figure out how to do this. So sometimes it's in parallel, right? And it's like, okay, figure out how to do all of these at once. Sometimes it's in sequence. You pick it up, and my 2 weeks is like I have 2 weeks off, and I'm going to spend those 2 weeks like playing piano, possibly doing gigs, singing at a wedding, like whatever it is like throw in those different aspects. But definitely it's driven by fun and fulfillment, and where those two are, it's just things open up.
Sweet. And one of my last questions, if you look backwards, so let's say I'm a physician, I'm listening to this, and I got inspired, and I want a bit more. So, what is the most rewarding part of your journey through creating AvoMD and implementing different clinical systems?
Most rewarding part, I like variety. So I like the ability of having so many different jobs where every day brings something different. So I get to
Yes.
do sales, I get to do helping guide societies in the format of how they might want to put their content. I like working with the team and being able to do team building and, resolving conflicts. I like doing podcasts. Each of these things is different, and it is so much fun to have each of those different aspects. It's very, very fulfilling to pass by some of our places that are customers and know that they're using us. I think just got off with one site that they said they looked at our year-long metrics. They said that our software was used more than 30,000 times in the
Wow.
last year. And every time I pass by one of their sites, I know that we're making a real impact, right? And forget the usage, like we have the outcome metrics, but the usage itself is important to me. It means that it's something we're not something which is a mandatory alert based. We're something that people go to because it's valuable. That's crazy, and in a good way. So that's another very fulfilling part. And then, most of all, and I always say it's not always about what you do, it's about the people that you work with. And if you have a team and build a team that's enjoyable to work with, then that is life. So it's definitely an aspect too.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like me too. Like podcasting, hospital, research. Like it's nice to have that variety in your day. I think that what helps to prevent burnout too.
Yep. Yep, 100%. It's if you're focused on one thing, if that one thing doesn't quite work out, then you lose that fulfillment. And if that's the whole of you, then you're gone. But if you have so many different aspects, like these different aspects can raise you whenever you need, and then you're back to being a whole person.
I love it. And my last question, you touch base on the teams and like the people you work with. Do you have any advice on like, let's say I'm a physician or like I'm a PhD candidate, I have background in academia, I want to become an entrepreneur. What advice would you give me for like hiring people versus firing people?
So first of all, I would say chat with a bunch of people, right? It's
Mhm.
for me, some of the best advice I got was a synthesis of chatting with 30 people about their journeys, career journeys, their advice, all of these things, and just my ability to synthesize it because people have their own approaches. On hiring and firing, interviews are not always the best for figuring out how good people are. References are not always the best. Sometimes it's going with it, and if you can hire fast and fire fast, that can work out. But then that can also be tough. People called my dad the great rehabilitator because he was able to take people that others said, "Oh, you should fire," and then he would work with them, and they would be amazing because there was some reason that they weren't working well, and he would figure that out, and then they would work well. So it's a great approach, except when it doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
So you can give people a chance
Exactly.
and try in that way. And if it doesn't work, then what are you doing? Like you have to run a business, and if they're not going to come to the table, then that's it. Or if there's some reason that you can, right? It's a business if you can't sustain, then that's a reason. But there should be a good reason. Should also be a good. That's on firing. There should also be a good reason for hiring. What specifically do you need for help? How is this person going to help you? And it could be a little bit more amorphous in the beginning. It's like, well, I need help in tech. And this person knows tech. Okay, good.
That's
Like
it.
you think they're great.
A
It's
talent you don't
cool.
have.
Like let's figure it out. So that's good. I've been lucky enough to get our third co-founder, Lawrence. So when PJ and I, first met him about a year into us working together, we had an initial thought, which was just we trust this guy. And then after having that thought, and he came in prepared and he helped us and good insights, but that was like the biggest pervasive feeling. It was like, okay, we got to take him on board. Like we'll figure out everything else together. So sometimes it's more of a gut decision that you can figure out, and you take in all these different aspects, but ultimately it's up to the gut to figure out if it's right or not.
I love it. I love it. That answer was full of wisdom. Every time I ask this question, I get different answers, and I think your perspective also is very unique. Just chatting with people and like knowing their journey. And I agree with you. The interviews are not the best indicator at all. Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. It's been really, really fun and great learning from you.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure.